Welcome to A Tonic for Lunacy. Today, I'm going to give you a little bit of information from my upcoming class that is in Shadow Stripper School. It's about format energies and the nutrition that we need. So I'm going to post here the beginning of that presentation of that class, and then I'll also give you a little bit of insights. But if you want to learn more, we are doing an entire month of nutrition and making sure our bodies are working optimally inside of Shadow Stripper School. So that includes some work on PHS, which is your top left variable arrow, our determination, how we're meant to ingest information and food. We're also going to be talking about, there's going to be a class about design and personality. So it's kind of splitting your chart up that way and what that can teach us. And then we will also talk nutrition and format energy and some other really cool nutrition body-based nuances in the human design chart that I found for you guys to play with. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to our Shadow Stripper School class on nutrition. So the reason that I thought this class would be so super important is because in order to really help our bodies process our traumas and heal from our traumas, restore wellness and well-being in our bodies, we really have to up our nutrition. We have to eat properly for our design, for who we are. So something that I have found notoriously true over and over and over again, and maybe that's because of my line 3, is that fad diets are super fun to try, but they never fucking work for me, right? Like the only diets that really work for me is when I stop eating. But that's for like losing weight, and it's not in a healthy or balanced way. So we want to stay away from that. But what's important is to really take some time to understand your design and how you can eat properly for your design so that you can help your body heal your trauma. You will find that if you're not eating properly, the vehicle, which Rock called the vehicle, right? Our design, our unconscious, the vehicle, the body, doesn't operate properly. And therefore, we cannot heal as quickly. We cannot work through our traumas. We cannot do the shadow work as well. Even our alignment, our purpose, it's all affected by how well the vehicle is operating. And we're going to talk about that in several different ways. The first presentation, the first little class that I have for you here is going to be about format energy and our nutrition. If you do not have format energy, I will give you some other little gates here and there that you can look at in terms of what to eat. But I would encourage you to really do your own experimentation with your PHS and just what has worked for you in the past. If you do not have format energy, what we talked about in terms of trauma is that we find that people that do not have format energy are often amplifying the nervous system responses of their caregivers. So then I would ask you to take a look at what you're eating, what you're ingesting, what you're putting into your body, and how much of that is based off of what other people have told you to do or what you've seen other people do, right? We want to, again, think about the amplification of what has worked for someone else that might no longer be working for me. If you do not know what format energy is, I'm going to show you. I feel like not a lot of people talk about format energy. I did a whole podcast episode about it a little while ago. So I can also post a link to that. Makes sense if I shared my screen. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, so there's something called rave biology, and you're gonna have a hard time looking this up because I had a very hard time looking this up. It was created by a man named Martin Grassinger, and he is a German human design teacher. And he studied with Ra, he worked with Ra directly. And Martin Grassinger, okay, so when I was doing all of this research, probably a few months ago, I reached out to Martin because I wanted to get more information. A lot of his stuff is in German. I wanted to see what this was all about. I wanted to talk to the man. And what he kind of told me was that He didn't even know that the Human Design School, I believe it's the International Human Design School, was still teaching this information, because from what I understood from him, he did not necessarily give them the right to do so, and he was not receiving any payment for this. So curious. Anyway, he seems like a great guy. We talked about potentially having a podcast episode together, him and I, where I could go into the shadow and he can go into a little bit of this. So stay tuned if that happens. But what I did learn from Martin is that there was a lot about rave biology and how format energies affect our nutritional needs. And that's because format energies fix our charts, and they really are the foundational pieces of the collective and the individual circuitries. The healing of our body is also the realigning of the vehicle to its purpose, which is another reason why this nutrition piece is so important. Okay, so what are format energies? Format energy is the connection between the sacral and the root. So the 4253, the 360, or the 952. Now, you can have format energy that's just a gate. You can see here, I have the root defined and I only have 52. I have the sacral defined and I only have 9. This still counts as format energy. Yes, having an entire channel is going to be more powerful, but just having a gate is still just as powerful when it comes to format energy. And how is this powerful? It's because it fixes our chart. Come on. The form, you know what? Let me talk. I know I'm going to get this question. If you have an undefined root with a, let's say, a hanging gate 52, this is still only potential energy. Still powerful, but not as powerful as having a defined gate coming out of a defined center or the entire channel. So if you have an undefined root with 52, that 52 is a potential energy. Experiment, right? This is the experimentation. When I talk to you about the 52 and its nutritional needs, play around with it. Does this feel correct for me? Or does this only feel correct for me when I'm around this person or doing this thing? And is that okay? Is that good for my body, right? It's really about learning to listen to our bodies and what they actually need rather than in here. The format energies per Martin Grassinger are supportive of the brain. So we know that unhealed trauma creates stress, which is going to flood our body with cortisol, which is the energy for fight or flight. But with complex PTSD and the way we currently live in constant states of stress, cortisol is constantly flooding our bodies. This is like, they call it like the cortisol belly, when you have this like little tire and you just can't get rid of this weight. It's called a cortisol belly because it's your body holding on to fat that's coming from the cortisol, from the continuous running of the cortisol of the stress. So your body can't get rid of this energy, this fat, this excess energy, because it's saving it up for fight or flight. So we saw when we did our work on trauma, the video on trauma, that being in fight or flight, certain parts of our bodies shut down, right? Like our digestion shuts down because that energy has to go towards fighting this lion, this tiger, this bear, right? So it will affect our physical health and our physical well-being. And what I've noticed, and this is true for me, is that most of us are in fight or flight, in constant stress, nonstop, which means that our bodies are constantly being pumped with cortisol, with that stress hormone, and our body's digestion and our breathing and our heart rate and all of these different things are being affected behind the scenes, and we don't realize it. We don't know why we're constantly tired. We don't know why we can't lose this weight. It's stress. It's trauma. It's being in survival. Cortisol interferes with our brain development, with weight loss, with nervous system regulation, the gut, and more. It has a ton of effects. This was one of my major things, was the cortisol in my body was nonstop living in survival mode. So if we can at least, at the very least, right, we're doing the nervous system regulation work. We're trying to de-stress. We're trying to breathe, to heal our trauma. But if we can add nutrition to that, and help our bodies meet our bodies halfway, it's going to happen a lot faster and it's going to be a lot more powerful. The least we can do while healing and restoring is supporting our brain by reducing cortisol and eating proper nutrition based on our design. All format energies carry the risk for depression, so eating properly also alleviates some of that risk. Now, we've got a double whammy, right? We have fight flight, where once we get to the end of the fight or flight, right, and our bodies are like, the threat is still here, we go into freeze, which is numbness, depression, anxiety, right? And then we have our cortisol, right? Or I'm sorry, our format energy that carries the risk for depression. And we're not living correctly with this format energy. We're not following it. We're going against it. We're in the shadow aspect of it. So now we have a risk for depression from format energies. And now we have a risk of depression from the way that we're eating and the way that we're living and the cortisol and the fight or flight and the freeze. Put that together and you have a perfect storm of depression, fatigue, anxiety, freeze. Format energies dictate whether the way we operate in the world is going to be logical and focused, cyclical and developmental, or unpredictable and mutative. But most importantly, they fix the body graph. What this means is that if I have 952 and I am here to be focused and be still, and that is how to solve problems in my life, and that is how I'm supposed to live my life and do the things, if you come into my energy, I am going to fix your chart in this energy. Now, if I am not correctly living in my 952, for me, it's just a 9. But if I'm not correctly living in that, it is going to throw the rest of my body graph into misalignment, into the not self. If I'm in the not self of my format energy, it is much easier for me to be in the not self of all of my other energies. If I am in the not self of my format energy, I am more likely to be operating in those gates that the planets are in detriment, and the lines, right? If the line is in detriment and you got that little arrow pointing down in, let's say, gate 2, line 1, right? I'm in detriment in line 1. That's a freeze response. I am more likely to play in those places where I am in detriment, when I am out of alignment with my format energy, when I'm in the not self. Now, each of these format energies need different fuels for their processes. There's a different kind of energy, nutrition, that I need to focus than I do to start new things, that I need to for cyclical developmental, right? For that experiential. Let's talk about that. Okay, format energies, we have the 52-9 right here. This is understanding, logic, it is collective. Logical, improving patterns for a better future. We have the 53-42, which is all the way on the left here. This is sensing, abstract, also collective. This is about gathering experiences, life wisdom, desiring change, and to be wise about the world. These people work in cycles. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you are working through something and you quit in the middle and there was no ending, you're going to feel a lot of disturbances in your field, right? It's going to be really distracting. It's going to be really fucking annoying. You're going to feel like, I just need closure. Like, I don't know why I can't stop thinking about this. I need closure. I need the cycle to end. If you can't see yourself closing out this cycle, this circle, it's going to be really hard for you to really gather those experiences and gain that life wisdom. 63, this is individual knowing. This is impulsive. It's mutative. It brings about change. It brings about something new into the world. As we know, with all individual channels and all individual gates, they carry with them the potential risk for depression, even more than the collective. All format energy does, because of the way that it affects the brain, but individual circuitry, that pulse can be really disruptive to your system if you're not doing the nervous system regulation work. I don't have the 63, but I have a lot of individual circuitry and almost the entire integration circuitry, and I can tell you that this is true. and that eating properly will alleviate this. Now, what I do want to tell you about this, and for the podcast, right? If you're listening to this podcast on YouTube or on Spotify or Apple, I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. But if you are watching the class, then you get the next few slides are going to be all about diving deeper into some of these other gates, the format energy, obviously, specifically what you need to eat, and some of these other gates as well, because these are also equally as important. So here we have the 52-9. The 52-9, what it needs to really sustain its logical pattern. This is about being focused. This is about being still and focusing all of your energy on something. So what this really needs, what the 52-9 really needs, is protein. A lot of times this is meat. And I can say for me, I have the 9, and meat has become a huge part of my diet. Protein, high protein. I was a vegetarian for 10 years and it did not work. I was diagnosed with celiac. I was constantly sick. I had gained a lot of weight. I'd lost a lot of weight. Inability to focus. I was a little bit of a disaster. But when I reintroduced meat into my diet, it really helps stabilize me. Not only that, but meat is really important for focus, but all for vitality of the 52, the 9, the focus of the 9, but then also for warmth of the system. And I think I talked about this in a previous podcast, that warmth was something that my body really, really needs. So that's the 52-9. Now the 53-42, this is going to be about fats and oils. So what the 53-42 needs in order to have a complete cyclical experience, in order to enter into the experiment correctly, have these experiences, and then have an ending point where they can really integrate their life wisdom, they need a healthy amount of fats and oils. It's sort of like, think about it as like lubricating the wheel, right, of the cycle. Again, these are healthy fats and oils, not like butter and saturated fats. Like we want to go with ghee, we want to go with avocado oil, coconut oil, and experiment. Again, experiment. Now, next we have the 63, and this is individual, knowing this is the pulse. Now, in order for the pulse to not create a shit ton of depression in your system, and it will, this channel, this format energy needs a lot of sugar and carbs. So they really need to have a balanced blood sugar level in order to be able to sit in that mutation. So when I say sit in the mutation, if you have individual energy, then you know that when you're sitting in it, it's melancholic, it's depression, it's moody, it's sad, it's upsetting. If you take it into your mind, it's like, why am I just like out of it now? And now I can't focus, and now I can't do anything. And what we're meant to do with individual energy is just sit in the melancholy and wait for that mutation to come through. And this is when we create something brand new that has never been seen before. But if we don't have enough carbs and healthy carbs and healthy blood sugar, then sitting in that off pulse is only going to create more depression. Because without a healthy level of blood sugar and carbs in our system, our body is going to be too fatigued and depressed. The brain is going to not be functioning as optimally. So you're going to sit in that melancholy, and you're just going to become more and more depressed, and it's going to be harder to get out of it. And it's going to be harder for that mutation to actually drop through for you, because your brain is not firing and wiring or working optimally. Okay, so those are the 3 format energies. Now, again, I encourage you, if you're listening to this on the podcast, to come and join us in Shadow Stripper School so you can get this entire class and learn more about this. I would also love to know your thoughts on whether you find this to be true or not. Again, there are other channels, other gates that are associated with this, and you can see them here if you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah, I would just love to know what you think about whether this resonates for you or not. And I hope to see you inside Shadow Stripper School. Bye-bye.